What's up, everyone? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football. And today we are here to break down Mississippi State ahead of the 2025 season. Before we get started, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel. That helps a ton for a small channel like this. A lot of you have participated over the weekend, was big for us. So thank you if you've helped. And last disclaimer, we are recording this in early May. The transfer portal just closed. Teams like Mississippi State have been extremely active, and I highly doubt they are done. From there, we're not just being critical of these teams to be critical. We're trying to actually evaluate what is going to happen in the season. So if you were a fan, just know criticism does not mean dislike. And if you disagree, please let me know in the comments and tell me why I might be wrong or why I'm missing something. That is also much appreciated as we try to get better. But let's look back at Mississippi State last year and then talk the team moving forward. Rough season. It was year one of a new coaching staff, so that is kind of to be expected in the SEC, especially with the constant changing of coaching staffs for this team. There was the unfortunate passing of Mike Leach, which was an extremely unique offense recruited in a certain way. That is extremely hard to turn over year. They go to Arnett, who plays maybe the polar opposite system, and a lot of problems with that program in and of itself. And then he's gone after a few seasons. So now you're turning it over to another unique coaching style in Jeff Lebby. So the 2-10 finish, it is what it is. They beat Eastern Kentucky and UMass. I will say they did play close in a number of contests. Arizona State, Georgia, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, all close games. Lebby, he comes from Ole Miss in Oklahoma, where he was OC with both Lane Kiffin and a lot of high-profile head coaches at this point. He is the acting OC. So Jeff Lebby calling plays. He's going to run this offense. They play at the speed of light, evidenced by the 6th ranked seconds per play. Pretty balanced in terms of pass to run rate, about a 50% pass rate overall. Just dealing with a lack of talent across the board as they've continually flipped rosters. O-line was a huge problem outside the top 100. Their QB got hurt immediately in the year. Receiver, up and down. They had, the Mario Craver suspension for a game. And then the defense cratered. They had a ton of injuries. And they finished dead last in pass rush efficiency and pass coverage efficiency. Much better against the run, but it is what it is. And now they're trying to build moving forward. So we go into year 2 of Jeff Lebby. They haven't changed much on the staff. They have co-DCs between Coleman Hutzler and Matt Barnes. Come from Memphis is in Barnes. He was the DC there from 2022 to 23. Hutzler was the outside linebackers coach at Bama in that same span. So they've brought in a lot of different players. They are trying to stack recruiting classes. This is also the number 1 JUCO team in the conference, and here is their recruiting over the last 3 seasons. 28th, 29th, and 27th. Very consistent towards the bottom of the conference, but it could be a lot worse, especially with the turnover they've had year. Retention has been a problem, as you can see, when they change staffs and when they change schemes drastically. They lost a majority of that 23 recruiting class. They're down to 26% retention there. Last year's class is at 63%. Some of that is just the weirdness of how the schedule played out for them. They lost their QB, Van Buren, obviously. Craver transferred as well. So they did drop 2 of their better players from that class, which is worth noting. But expecting this to get better for Mississippi State is hopefully they show some improvement in the SEC year. Which brings me to their roster. Here is our 2-deep depth chart. We'll link this in the video description, but we're trying to find contributors at every position. That's why we do the 2-deep. Transfers are in yellow. You can see there's a ton of them from Mississippi State. We've experienced their year in school, how many snaps they played the last 2 seasons, what recruit they were in terms of star ranking. And then we have a value score, which is basically looking at your recruiting first and foremost, and then it factors in how much you've played year and how well you've played. So the longer you've been in college, the farther you are away from recruiting, the less your recruiting ranking is taken into consideration. Which brings us to the quarterback position, and we have the return of Blake Shapen after he was injured last year. They lost Michael Van Buren to the portal. Shapen, when he was active, was awesome. 68.5% completion on 108 passes, 9 yards per attempt, 8 touchdowns, 1 pick, 7 big-time throws, 6 turnover-worthy plays. So he did run a little hot there. Should be noted that those games were against Eastern Kentucky, Arizona State, Toledo, and Florida, so definitely not the toughest of opponents. But he has a couple of years of starting experience prior to Mississippi State. He started at Baylor. He runs a little bit, 1.1 yards per carry through his career. So Chapin is a decent place to start. They added reclamation project Luke Krummenhoek from Florida, who comes in, former four-star. And then they also have a freshman four-star in Kamario Taylor. When Krummenhoek had to play last year, he was an absolute mess, but it was with that horrific Florida State team. So maybe there's still some hope for him. We've seen Jeff Levy work with a lot of good quarterbacks throughout his tenure. And then they have the freshman four-star. So the quarterback position is in a shockingly good spot for Mississippi State, considering they're coming off a 2-10 season, and it's been a disaster in Starkville since the Mike Leach days. At running back, this position should be pretty good. Top two rushers are back. Devon Booth, 5'10", 205, former Utah State product. Rushed for 759 yards last year. That's 5 yards per carry, 13 catches. Former JUCO product Johnny Daniels is back, 5'10", 200 pounds. 108 rushes for 540 yards, also 5 yards per carry. Decent pass catching from both these guys. And they have a four-star sophomore in Xavier Gatton, as well as a South Alabama transfer in Fluff Bothwell. Bothwell got on the field a lot more than expected because of injuries, but when he was out there, my goodness. He's 5'10", 219, 111 rushes for 823 yards. That's 7.5 yards per carry, 13 catches. I mean, they brought back their dudes, and then they added depth. It's hard to say this run game is any worse. It should be upgraded. Receiver, we have no idea what to expect. We mentioned they lost Craver, so not just him. This is a completely remade room. Here are the transfers they bring in. We'll go through the list, and then we'll do them individually. Brennan Thompson from Oklahoma, Aiden Williams, Ole Miss, Anthony Evans from Georgia, Jerron Glover from Michigan State, Marcus Allen from Eastern Michigan, and Cam Thompson, Northern Illinois. That's in addition to bringing back their second leading receiver and former four-star Jordan Mosley, who's 6 feet, 195, caught 23 passes last year for 405 yards. Plays on the perimeter, modest 1.34 yards per route, but no one was really dominating there. Brennan Thompson should have a role here. Started with Texas, then went to Oklahoma, 5'9", 165 pounds, but burner. 19 catches, 230 yards, and 2 scores. Plays on the perimeter. Not going to be a good yards per route run guy unless we see some significant development. He hasn't been in his career, but he has a tool that is useful for an offense like this. The deep throws, the deep catches, that's Thompson's game if he can develop. Aiden Williams is a former four-star with Ole Miss. He only has 7 catches in 2 years. Another boundary receiver at 6'3", 205. I don't want to penalize him from playing with Antwain Wells and Trey Harris and Jordan Watkins. How are you going to get on the field with that receiving core? So hopefully the four-star recruiting can be developed a little bit here, and it's a wide-open depth chart, so no one's blocking you of Trey Harris's caliber. Evans is a Georgia transfer, 4-star, 13 catches over the last 2 years, 5'11", 170. He, I think, is going to be used mainly as a return man, used inside and out of the slot, but mainly used as a special teamer for Georgia. Jerron Glover, 6'1", 204, 15 catches, 192 yards, a perimeter receiver with 1.7 yards per route. Had 29 catches over the last 2 years. Should be more depth. Marcus Allen, probably a depth guy too. He originally was at Wisconsin before transferring to Eastern Michigan, where he caught 43 balls for 651 yards last year. 6'2", 212. Another boundary receiver. 2 yards per route at that level, but now we need to project forward. And then Cam Thompson from he is back. We just haven't seen him play much so far, which overall is a weird group. It's a lot of players either transferring up from low-level G5s or cast-offs from elite programs, along with the 2 incumbent 4-stars. Between the 9 or so players we just named, I'm pretty confident they can find 3 regular contributors, and maybe it's 2 in that third position is a gadget, Brennan Thompson for some, and then a slot receiver for others. We'll see how they comprise this, but it should be a decent receiving unit. Tight end, they get back Seydou Traore. Caught 34 balls last year, 361 yards. 6'4", 235, originally with Arkansas State. He's an average blocker, so that's pretty good for them. There's almost nothing behind him. Cameron Ball, he transferred in last year from Buffalo. He was horrible, 24 snaps, so it is what it is. They have a couple low-level transfers coming in this year. Sam West from Indiana, Max Reese from Eastern Michigan. West has barely played, 58 snaps last year, only ran 11 routes. Reese has played a lot, but he was actually below average when you go and look at MAC play. So 6'2", 237, more of an H-back type. The real ceiling might come from a JUCO transfer and Emeka Ilo, who's 6'9", These body types generally don't work in college football, so he would be an outlier, but maybe a situational athletic receiver. You just rarely see 6'9" players, even at like offensive tackle. 6'8" is very tall there. So a weird product. We'll see what he can give him. He's a JUCO kid. O-line lost 3 starters, but that's not saying much. Well outside the top 100 across the board. This unit has taken a ton of transfers, which makes it very tricky to project. I'm going to try to give the candidates position by position, so tackle, then guard, then center, and see if we can't figure out what this is going to look like. At tackle, I think the first player to mention is full-time returning starter Albert Reese, 804 snaps last year, below average blocker across the board, allowed a team high. He's on the hot seat at the very least. I think Blake Steen is a candidate to play. He was the right tackle from Virginia, started the last 2 years. Good run blocker, only allowed 30 pressures, so that should be an upgrade. Wouldn't be surprised if Steen was the left tackle, Reese was the right, something like that. We also need to remember Luke Wark is back, the 4-star sophomore. He was horrendous last year, but he was thrown to the fire, I would argue, before he was ready. Committed 5 penalties, so some of the poor play is between the ears stuff, which should be cleaned up as his sophomore 4-star. So there's still some hope left for Luke Wark. And then they have 4-star second year. Jimothy Lewis played 52 snaps, mostly at right tackle. I think your 2 tackles come from this group of 4, if I had to guess. At left guard, Jacoby Jackson is back after 658 snaps. They were largely average. He played a lot with Texas Tech before he came over to the Bulldogs, 2-year starter there. 15 pressures last year was pretty solid. Not sure who the other guard is going to be. They did add Zach Owens, formerly of Colorado and Clemson. He is a former 4-star, but he could not play at Colorado last year, which is not a good sign. You couldn't get on the field with the Buffs, where we had Sanders running for his life. It's probably not the best sign. They also have Cannon Boone back after 144 snaps last year. He could probably play anywhere on the interior. He did move around a lot when he played. And finally, Trevor Mayberry's coming over from Stanford. He missed last year, but originally a Penn commit, then transfers to Stanford. He played 732 snaps in 2023, allowed 25 pressures, and was below average in the Pac-12, so that's a bit concerning. Center, completely up for grabs. Kobe Keenum comes in from Kentucky, 3-star freshman in last year's class, only 32 snaps. Brennan Smith comes in from UTEP. He was a 2-year starter at Austin Peay. He did play tackle there, but then when he goes to UTEP, follows the coaching staff. Split time between guard and center, so that gives him a little bit of work on the interior at the center position. And Cannon Boone played a little center last year. We already mentioned him, so that needs to be noted. There are some deeper reserves that could function into this unit that I'm just not sure about. A lot of JUCO kids, those are the hardest to project because they don't have any quality statistical keeping at JUCO, really. Jaquan Bolden comes in for Purdue. He's a 3-star with no experience, so he's hard. Javen James comes in from Akron. He was the right tackle there. Solid across the board, but that was in the MAC. And then the JUCO guys, Jakeem Shumpert and Saquon Miles. The only thing to really say about these players is Shumpert is the number 2 tackle available from JUCO, so he's a pretty good get. Again, I don't know how the offensive line is going to shake out, but the one thing I can say is there's a lot more experience and more talent. It's just a matter of now Mississippi State needs to figure out the best 5 and piece together this unit in a way that's not going to get their quarterback killed, Blake Shapen, again early in the season. Defense. Defensive line returns a lot at edge, but they still decided to upgrade and hit the portal. They were horrible last year, so this makes sense. They had 2 Northern Illinois guys, Nevaeh Sanders and Rasheem Thomas. They also had Malik Silla from Texas A&M and Red Hibbler from NC State. Silla is the highest recruit, 4-star. Played 373 snaps over the last 3 years with A&M. Strong rotational numbers, but he had 5 pressures. 4 of them came against New Mexico State. We'll see what he gives you. Hibbler played a lot, but then last year he got hurt after just 4 games. He was pretty average before then, above average in some stats, especially the pass rushing. He had 18 pressures on 252 snaps in 23, so hopefully he can get back to form there. Rasheem Thomas, again, hurt 4 games into last year, but he did play 557 the year prior, well above average in the MAC, over 1,700 snaps to his name. And then Sanders hasn't played much, just a depth piece there. Then the incumbents, they do return some players. 4-star Brandon Jennings, formerly of UCF in Maryland. He's well-traveled, had some concerns prior to actually getting here and starting. 18 pressures for him is pretty good. Deontay Anderson played 317 snaps. Joseph Head Jr. played 243. So now you have at least 7 options, whereas last year you had 3 or 4, and they weren't great. Hopefully the competition just helps overall. They also landed a 4-star edge in Tyshawn Willis, freshman. Interior group, they also hit the portal. They bring in Will Whitson from Coastal Carolina, Jere Bledsoe from Texas, Colin Coates from Charlotte, Darren Reed from Auburn. Whitson, another player, 4 games last year. Obviously, that's important because you preserve a red shirt. But he played 474 in 2023, 28 pressures. Little undersized for the interior, so maybe he's more of a tweener, a 5-tech, or an edge. We'll see. Bledsoe, former 4-star, played 107 snaps the last 3 years. Reed, the former Auburn 4-star, played 11 snaps the last 2 years. The only guy I don't think is a big factor is Coates. He was below average with Charlotte. But it's the same thing as the offensive line and receivers. It's a nice blend of returners versus transfers up from G5 and then cast-offs from P5. Or, I mean, a lot of these are actually higher than that, like elite SEC teams in Bledsoe and Darren Reed. So we'll see what they can give you. They also have Kedrick Bingley-Jones, North Carolina transfer, played in 4 games. Pretty average, but he's a former 4-star. Otherwise, Trevion Williams, a former 4-star, played 322 snaps last year. Kai McClendon played 411 snaps. There's just a lot more depth. And they also go to the JUCO route. They bring back Corey Clark, Ashawn Shepard, as well as current JUCO transfer Jamarcus Moy. Just a lot more names. There's no other way to spin this other than they're better. I guess they're not to get ahead of myself, but with Mississippi State as a whole and all these players they both bring back and add, my real question is, can they jump from like 100th overall to average, or is this going to be like a team that jumps to 40th and they're never going to be a contender, at least in year 2 under Levy. They need to continue this trajectory. But is this a frisky team that like knocks off some teams in the mid-tier? We'll see, but 2 more positions before we get there. Their top defensive player at linebacker, Stone Blanton, does depart. They do return 1 starter, Nick Mitchell, 674 snaps. He was one of the worst players on the team that actually had to play. Really bad in coverage, 20 catches and 24 targets. We'll see about the development, but the transfer portal is going to come in handy. Darian Gillette from Texas, Jalen Smith from Tennessee, both good recruits, 4-stars. Gillette has not played much, 11 snaps last year, so pure projection. Smith has played a fair amount, 256 snaps for Tennessee. Very good run defender, too. They also got 226 snaps from Zachary Tillman. 4-star freshman Tyler Lockett joins the program, along with a couple JUCO kids, LaKendrick James and Montreal Chapman, both complete unknowns. Should be better. Defensive back. They have 2 corners back that are at least worth noting. Sophomore 4-star Kelly Jones was forced into the fire last year. Actually played well in the run game. And then of his 391 snaps, 134 yards into his coverage was decent. They returned their nickel as well. Former 4-star Isaac Smith. He was the 2nd best defender on the team behind Blanton, and he was awesome in coverage. Pretty good in the run game with tackling as well. And this leaves us with 1 corner spot up for grabs. There's a lot of options. Dwight Lewis comes in from Marion. I don't think he's a legitimate candidate. It's just such a big jump. Javen Williams comes in from Kennesaw State. He was about average in coverage. So I think they may look to incumbents Diego Brumfield and Brylan Lanier. Brumfield played in 4 games, slightly below average, but he started with Memphis in 23. Lanier originally came from Indiana, but he was pretty bad last year on 607 snaps. I don't know if he's going to get another shot, but Amarian Jefferson comes in from JUCO. Maybe they move a safety to a position as well. We'll see how the last corner shakes out, but that's my biggest concern so far with the defense. Safety was another weakness. 4-star Hunter Washington is back. He played nearly 700 snaps last year, but was a little bit of a liability in coverage. 21 catches on 32 targets. And then they bring in some transfers. Jerron Manning from Old Dominion. He was actually a JUCO guy originally, but last year with Old Dominion, he allowed just 59 yards on 621 snaps, 3 PBUs, 3 INTs is pretty awesome. And JUCO safeties Tony Mitchell and Jabrias Stewart come in. Mitchell actually originally was recruited by Alabama. Then he got kicked off the team for marijuana. Then he went down to JUCO, and this is a 4-star, so he's not your normal JUCO transfer. And then lastly, they have another JUCO kid in Tyler Woodard. He played 67 snaps with Mississippi State last year. Getting to special teams, Kyle Ferry is back. Missed 1 extra point last year, but was 26 of 34 on field goals. He doesn't have a lot of range. He was 9 of 14 on 40+. He's never hit a 50-yarder. Finished as the 101st most efficient kicker last year, so is what it is. Maybe he's a little better and develops. Kicker's always going to be a volatile position that deals with the sample size problem. And let's look at schedule for Mississippi State. I already went through my main point with this team, that I think they're better just out of essentially pure necessity. But it really comes down to the blend of they return so much along with the players they infused with the competition you added just due to the inflection of talent. It's really hard for me to even see this team being worse. But how does that translate to wins and losses? Because technically, you can win 2 games and still be better. But let's look at the schedule as we get to this upcoming season. It's not the easiest. Lucky for them, they do play a fairly easy non-conference schedule. I think you have 3 auto wins in Southern Miss, Northern Illinois, and Alcorn State. Arizona State made the playoff last year. They're going to be good this year because they returned so much. But remember how close that game was the first time these teams played. Now, it was early in the Arizona State experience, but this was a 7-point game. 30-23 was the score. I think this would be a great in-season betting opportunity. And I'll definitely have my eyes on it to see how many points Mississippi State is catching, especially at home here. But 3-1 is the most likely outcome. The problem is when you get to conference play, this is such a challenging schedule. You essentially have none of the bottom feeders. I would obviously include Mississippi State in that, but I don't see Vanderbilt. You don't see Kentucky. Arkansas is on there, but Arkansas is a pretty decent team. You have to go to Arkansas for that contest. So, I mean, it's a little problematic. You do play some of the tougher teams. You have A&M, Georgia, and Texas. Those are 3 of the top 4 teams in this conference. You only dodge Bama. Your road trips are against a lot of the middling teams. You got to go down to Florida. You got to go to Missouri, close against Ole Miss in the rivalry. It's a challenging schedule for this team. I don't think they're going to make a bowl, but I would think this team is probably looking at 4 wins. 3 wins obviously would be probably around what you would expect, but 4, I think that's a good outcome. 5, I think you'd be pretty confident moving forward with Levy, but there's a lot to work on for this team. But that'll do it for us today. Let me know who you want to see next and if you have any other feedback. But until then, good luck, everyone. We will see you next time.